The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. I'm Jeff Haecker, and joining me today on the panel are Thomas Salerno. Hey, Thomas.
Hi, Jeff.
And Patrick Mason. Hey, Pat.
Howdy, Jeff.
And though this will come out a few days later, I thought we should acknowledge and wish everyone a happy Hobbit Day, which is the birthday of celebration of Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, which is September 22nd.
Yeah, no admittance to this podcast except on party business.
And per the invitation, there will be wheelbarrows for those who inadvertently remain behind.
Hooray!
And on that note, be sure to follow The Secrets of Middle-earth in Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or any podcast directory or app. And you can find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or on Twitter, where we are at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And don't forget, you can get your own official Secrets of Middle-earth merch, including our awesome t-shirt at sqpn.com/merch. And it's a great way for you to support the show and show your love for Tolkien and his wonderful world of Middle-earth. Before we get to tonight's party business of Rings of Power Season 2, Episode 6, we had a couple minor news items. Thomas, I don't know if you wanted to share the one you put in here.
Sorry. Speech, yeah. Well, my speech is short, and that is that the official poster was revealed for War of the Rohirrim. I saw it on X, formerly known as Twitter. I loved this poster. I think it looks great. It almost kind of reminds me of a Star Wars poster.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also it also evokes the posters for the original Peter Jackson trilogy. It even says Peter Jackson Presents on the top. But I like it a lot. I think it's a great poster. If they end up selling them, I'll probably snag one for my wall. It looks great.
Yeah, it does look really cool, and yeah, I think at some point we'll probably do an episode more about Rohan leading up to the movie. And then the other news item that we saw is Tales of the Shire has a release date of March 25th of 2025, which is Tolkien Reading Day as well. Mm-hmm. So kind of fitting there. But there's been demos that have been coming out. So I've started seeing people reviewing a demo of it and seeing some kind of mixed reviews. Some say it's very much like you're in the Shire and it's kind of like you're foraging and farming to cook, basically. So it's kind of one of those cozy type of games. So if that's kind of your thing, you might like it, but others have said kind of, at least the first part that they played was kind of tedious. So we'll see. Hopefully it does better than the Gollum game from last year.
Yeah.
It's like Animal Crossing, but in the Shire, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like Stardew Valley. Yeah. It's just like, I want to play this game, but I'm afraid of it because I know that if I start to play this game, I might never stop. And so I just get caught in that kind of cozy game loop of farming stuff and building the little town. And so,
yeah, well, I mean, if you get a chance to go to the Shire, why would you ever want to leave? Because
right, yeah,
exactly. I want my hole in the ground and super coziness in my treasure chest.
Exactly.
8 meals a day.
All right. Well, before we diverge too much to talking about The Hobbit, today we are discussing The Rings of Power, Season 2, Episode 6. Where is he? Arondir alone is on his way to Eregion, taking out orcs along the way. In Numenor, Elendil refuses to make allegiance to Pharazon and is sentenced to be judged by the Valar by facing the Sea Worm. There are some sparks fly between he and Miriel as she volunteers to take his place. She comes face to face with the worm, but is returned to the land, hailed as Queen of the Sea by Elendil and others, while Pharazon looks on. Pharazon then goes to the Palantir and sees a vision of Halbrand and fire. In Rune, Nori discusses turning herself into the masked men and Poppy flirts with Merrimack. Not Gandalf, definitely not Gandalf, seeks advice from Tom, who wears a blue cloak, and Tom brings him to a valley full of trees to find a staff. He tells him he will find it when his vision of service to the secret fire is singular. At Eregion, Annatar continues to twirl his mustache while Celebrimbor struggles to forge more rings. His mind is fraying, and he says they need more mithril. Annatar goes to Khazad-dûm and asks Durin for mithril, however the king turns him down. And though Annatar leaves peacefully, he sees a Balrog in the fire. The king tells Prince Durin they will stockpile mithril for weapons and armor to increase the price as war is breaking out. Durin tries to reason with him to take off the ring, but the king strikes him. Disa tells Durin they cannot dig and summons her inner Batman to stop Narvi and his crew. Adar meets with Galadriel and deduces Halbrand to Sauron. He asks if the elves will let the Uruk return and live in Mordor, but she cannot answer for the king. An elf body washes up to Eregion, but Annatar hides this from Celebrimbor. After getting Galadriel to confirm that Sauron is at Eregion and that her ring is with Elrond, Adar begins the assault. Celebrimbor hears the siege alarm, but Annatar shows him a false vision that Eregion is at peace, and Celebrimbor leaves Annatar to handle the administration of Eregion. But in reality, fireballs begin to rain down on the city. All right, so Thomas, I'll ask you first. What were your impressions of this episode?
I said that last episode, I liked it a lot. This one I may have liked just as much or even more. I thought the pacing was great. I thought all the character stuff was great. I was hooked from beginning to end. Again, there's countless things I could nitpick, but when I was watching, I just didn't care about that stuff. I was just drawn into the story and the characters and the action and what was happening. So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode, and I'm looking forward to, I guess, our kind of extended 3-part finale of this season, which will be mostly the siege, I guess. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Yeah, they kind of already said it. They said really 2.5, but it was really, I feel like it was like 2 and like 7/8 will be the final battle, because it was really just the very end. But yeah. All right, Pat, let's have it.
Well, first off, you didn't say where is he correctly. Speaking of Batman,
where is he?
There you go. There you go. Where is he?
Where is
Slam. Yeah. He takes the Joker into the table. So I honestly really like this episode. Besides the punch in the face that, yeah, this is totally not Gandalf. Which, like, I'm still standing on it. It's not Gandalf.
Going down with the ship.
Yes, I'm gonna go down with this ship. I called Halberd early. I'm gonna stick without. Bombadil was really my only problem, and it's surmised very simply by my daughter's reaction to him on screen, which is he's not joyful. He's not merry enough. That's not Bombadil. And I'm like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was my big problem with the episode.
And the funny part is he is still like fairly whimsical in nature, which I think they got that part right. He just wasn't like, he's a merry fellow. It's in the song. Like, I don't. Okay.
It's in the song that they composed for this season, and yet he's not merry enough.
Well, he doesn't have his yellow boots, so maybe that's what he needs.
That's true. Gotta get those yellow
Maybe
boots.
those enable the merriness to continue.
He just needs to get back to Goldberry, that's all, I guess.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I was one of the questions, which I'll get to, but one of the questions I had is are we done with Tom this season, or do we think he'll pop up? I think he might be done.
Yeah, I think he might be done after he did the Batman thing where you look away and then you look back and he's gone. And I'm like, oh, that's it for Tom, I think. Unless he's like, we see him at the very end of the season, maybe. Yeah.
And speaking of that scene, I did really like what he said to the 100% definitely not Gandalf about it. But before we get there, we'll go back and kind of walk through the episode. But overall, I really like this one too. Numenor was great. I think is I think one of my favorite things. But of course, I love Aragorn and Gondor and Men of the West. So anything Numenor, even though it's going to come to a tragic end, probably, I still love it. So that part was great, and then Annatar, Charlie Vickers, just continuing to have so much fun playing this villainous role. And then we didn't get anything with Isildur. So I guess we kind of talked about a couple episodes ago, is he traveling with Arondir, but I guess he stayed back behind in Pelargir. So
where is he?
Yeah, I'm assuming Pelargir.
Yeah.
But I really like this one too. I think it's going to be. It feels like we just started. I know that happens when you have 8 episodes and 3 of them come out at once. It's a very short time span. But overall, I did really like it. But I think we'll see Arondir, because that's kind of one of the first things is his kind of travels to Eregion. He's just continuing his parkour. I think he's getting doing more parkour every time we see him. Like he's got more moves than the last time, so he's leveling up.
Yeah, he'll get to Legolas level by the end of the show.
He'll be cruising down a river, hopping on dwarfs and barrels.
Yeah, able to use bats as flying mechanisms.
Yeah, my first note on here was about Noah Isildur, so we've already kind of touched on that. But my thought is he's just back at Pelargir and probably waiting on Numenor, waiting on Dad to come and get him.
And staring daggers at Estrid's beloved, I guess.
Yeah.
To set up the love triangle.
Yeah, it's definitely possible, but not much else there. So I don't know. I didn't know if y'all had any other thoughts on Isildur. I mean, I feel like we've got to come back to Pelargir at some point. This, even if it's just one scene of seeing them all kind of, seeing Isildur look west and wistfully for his coming ships or something. But I don't know if y'all had any thoughts or speculation on what he's doing right now, or if we'll see him again.
Oh, we'll definitely see him again before the season wraps. I just don't know what there is for him to do.
We haven't seen the one scene from the trailer where Arondir is sort of walking down that set of steps with the people around, on either side of him. And he looks dressed in kind of an official thing. At least I don't think we've seen that scene yet. I may be wrong, but I feel like that still is going to happen. There is still going to be a setting out for Middle Earth from the Numenorians, and he's probably going to end up leading it. And then we'll get the reunion between, son and father.
Yeah. And that's something I have in my notes too, of what that we can talk about at the end is, is Numenor going to show up at Eregion? But before we get there, we're going to, there's a lot going on, but before we get there, I figure we can touch on because Adar starts meeting with Galadriel, having a nice candlelit dinner.
Those scenes were great, by the way, and I think this new actor has really cemented himself in the role as Adar. Everything he was saying and just his whole performance, he's just inhabited the character. And so I'm sorry I can't remember these people's names either, but I'm sad that we lost the previous performer, but I think this guy's really selling it. Yeah. I like those scenes a lot.
Yeah, there's no feeling like the character changed, right? Especially through this conversation he has with Galadriel, which is the, reverse of, the reverse position, right? She's the prisoner now, and he's the one that has her captive, although he plays her like a fiddle both times. And watching him do it, I absolutely loved this scene, or those two scenes, but especially the dinner scene. It was so well done in so many ways, the way they did the place settings. If you look at the food, it actually looks really good. It's a number of different, it's rabbit and maybe some kind of lamb or and like a chicken, and there's like fruit, there's berries. And if it was set out on a nice looking elven table with elven place settings, it would all look fabulous and wonderful. But it looks like kind of weird and gross because of the setting you're in, because of the orcs around and Adar and his weird chair and the silverware. And so it sort of very subtly showcases kind of the difference between like the orcs and the elves, and sort of like the thoroughly broken nature of the orcs, that even like the good stuff, they make even like good stuff look bad. I love how the scene is shot. They use a number of slanted, going back to Batman, because they use this so heavily in all the Batman shows, in all the movies, doesn't matter who the director is. You have those angled shots, which kind of showcase sort of a madness or an issue with the character who's saying the lines. And they have both Adar and Galadriel in those shots. And then in other shots, it's like dead on or straight on. And and it's interesting to watch the interplay of what they're saying and what they're doing, because they're discussing Sauron and how Sauron, and I love how Adar puts it. He sort of like bores a hole in you and then slithers his way in. Yeah. But they're both in that spot. Like they both have that problem and they're trying to talk to each other about it. And I love her reaction when he brings the crown out. Like she's just like terrified and mortified and angry all at the same time. And
Morgoth's
very well
crown
portrayed.
confirmed. Yeah.
That was a fantastic portrayal. And the last bit of like what I love what Adar does is he proposes sort of a truce, or not a truce, but kind of a truce, but like a combining of forces. Convenience. Yeah. So your rings plus this crown, and we can take him down, right? And he says, you just have to get over your pride, right? Because, you're elves and we're orcs, right? He corrects her. But at the same time, what he's doing is he's trying to play on her pride, her pride that she has to be involved in Sauron's downfall. And so that's how he ends up getting the information he wants, is because he's plying her and saying, you've got to get over your pride. But what he's really doing is kind of poking her to wake the pride up. Mm-hmm. I also thought it was a little funny to me that this scene is sort of an explanation for why Galadriel was so terribly focused in the first season. And I was like, bravo, writers. You wrote out your terrible writing from the first season of Galadriel due to a magical obsession with Sauron. Good job. Slow clap.
Yeah, it's funny because it'll be like I think I said before, it'll be interesting to 10 years or whenever the season show is over, watching this and then going and watching Lord of the Rings, because I'm kind of I'm still kind of headcanoning that these are in the same universe to some extent. And I mean, of course, the Fellowship or Lord of the Rings is based on the book, and Galadriel in that story is much more measured, and she's much less quick to action. And she says, at least in the Lord of the Rings movies, she refuses to take the ring, and she's very, very much more reserved. Now in the Hobbit movies, just to get our contractual reference, she's a little bit more of an action hero, so she calmed down a little bit between the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. But yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to watch all of that together and see kind of the progression. Because I've been wondering too if that was Morgoth's crown that Sauron's been wearing the whole time in Lord of the Rings, and we finally have it. Because I'm pretty sure that's what his part of his armor, or whatever you want to call it, by the time of Lord of the Rings, but before he loses the ring, when you see him kind of fully armored. So I'm kind of hoping at some point we see him make this armor and put it on, because it is pretty cool, super scaly, heavy metal armor. So I hope we get to see that at some point. But that was a great. Those two scenes were really good, and I still think Adar was maybe sincere and at least saying like, let's combine forces, but he also knew that she would never go for it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So which is interesting because, normally orcs are bad, never redeemable, but I think he was like, if she had said yes, I think he might have agreed to, at least like a temporary, ceasefire or whatever of let's take out Sauron and then we can, go back to our own fight. But if the other elves are on their way to Mordor anyway, I don't know what troops they could provide to Eregion. I think we'll have to see Elrond kind of rally everybody because we see that in the trailer.
Yeah. I like that he says there are many stories about what happened to the crown after the Silmarils were pried from its settings. I think that's just such a cool line and implies that all these legends and tales have cropped up around, the real events. I think that's really neat. And another interesting line that Adar has is that he says he accuses the elves. He says, your drive to prove your virtue will work right into Sauron's hands. And I just thought that was interesting, that like sometimes, the drive to prove like I'm righteous, I'm right, will end up causing all kinds of other unintended consequences, which we saw from Galadriel in the first season.
Yeah. I'm the most humble person. Oh, okay.
And I'll prove it.
I'll prove it to you.
I take pride in my humility.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we, I guess we can kind of, our notes kind of have unless y'all have anything y'all want to talk about in the early part of the episode with her and Adar, we could kind of move on to talking about definitely not Gandalf and Tom Bombadil. So, because of course he's trying to find his staff because he's trying to learn this power. And Thomas, I think you had some notes in here about the secret fire.
Right. So like Tom talks a lot about the secret fire, which I noticed when I rewatched last episode that Tom, he has a lot to do with fire. He lights all those candles magically. And then that one time, I think when he's singing, like the fire in the fireplace like blazes up or something like that.
Like yawns,
yeah.
I think.
He yawns. Okay, yeah. So it's like okay, he has a lot to do with fire, and he's talking about the secret fire a lot in this episode. And of course, especially when he says that like the secret fire doesn't need you as a master, he says to the stranger, because the stranger's like, I've got to master this power. And he's like, what does it need you as a master? He says you need to be of service to it. And that reminds me of course, Gandalf's famous line, I am the servant of the secret fire. The first thing he says though is really cool. He says the secret fire whispers to us if we have ears to hear. Almost reminds me of like the Holy Spirit, right? And which is, visualized as tongues of fire, but they often say, like the Holy Spirit speaks to you if you have ears to listen. But
you hear God not in the raging wind or the tempest or anything. You hear God in the this very small breeze. I think it was Elijah.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that's put in the Old Testament.
But I just thought it was interesting that like they seem to be establishing the secret fire, and the way Tom talks about it is like it's almost like I was thinking. So is this like Middle Earth's version of the Force, the secret fire? That it's like a power that wizards use to that helps them, do their various magical abilities. But as Tom says, it's not a power you master. It's more of a presence that you serve. So it's not like the Force in that sense, but it almost just kind of, it seemed very much like they're explaining the secret fire to the audience in a way that sounds very much like the Jedi and the Force.
Yeah. I did really like the line though, because they go looking for a staff because that's what he needs to get powers. He has to build his lightsaber to keep that to be a true Jedi. But what I found this line really, really compelling and really interesting that Tom says. He says, to find your staff, your heart's vision must be single to the service of the secret fire. Which, I mean, if you've ever done any kind of religious discernment, that's like, I mean, that I just love that line so much. And it's like you can want whatever you want, but when you're discerning of in any way, whether it's, you know, any vocation or even, you know, smaller, like whether to take a new job or something, like your only concern should be not how it, I mean, of course, how it has to be how, you know, how it will help you live your own life, but also like what is it in service of? Are you going to take, you know, the job that will just service you, or will it service others? So I just thought that line was great from Tom.
Yeah, I think you're right, Thomas. They haven't really explained that when they're talking about the secret fire, they're talking about like Eru Iluvatar's like gift of being and life, you know, into the world. And so the concept of like, and I love Tom's response, because Tom knows that, right? But the stranger doesn't seem to understand it. And he's like, what would it do with you as a master? Like, okay. Yeah. But interesting enough, that's kind of where all of us go, right? We want to make God our own. You know, we want God to do what we say. And, right. You know, that's the curse of free will, is we try and bend it back onto God. And I agree. That line, I love that line, because it's sort of like, look, effectively what Tom's telling us, like, you know, God's not going to give you the power you're looking for unless you're singly minded, focused on serving him. That's how this goes. And preface with the earlier line, like, this is the last test, bud. You failed everything before, and there's not going to be any more from there, which I don't know if that's a threat or if it's what it is, but
yeah, right. And it's interesting too, because Melkor's big mistake is that he tries to control the secret fire. He goes out into the void searching for it. He thinks it's a force that he can control. He doesn't realize that, you know, it is the creative agency of Eru Iluvatar. And Melkor won't serve. He'll only control stuff. And, you know, like there's that famous legend. It's not in scripture, but there's been this, you know, legend in Christian history that the devil's fall involved a refusal to serve God. Non serviam, I will not serve. Yeah. So it's interesting that, you know, Tom says you must serve if you want to get anywhere in this line of wizarding work. You know, you've got to submit yourself. You've got to bend the knee. If you don't, you know, you're not going to get anywhere, because you're just going to be focused on yourself. And I think he won't find the staff until he realizes that. And they set up the Empire Strikes Back temptation of my friends are in danger. I must help them, because he has.
The minute he woke up, I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. We're back on Dagobah.
We're back on Dagobah, because like Tom is Yoda, he's Luke, and he has the vision of Nori and Poppy in danger, and he's like, I must save my friends, and you know, you leave them, you know, if you leave now, help them you could, you know, like Yoda. It's like, I'm just like, oh.
It's you know, I trained the last guy, but he turned out to be a dark wizard too. I mean,
oh, that's right.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, come on, guys.
So many like things have done this. Avatar: The Last Airbender did it too, where Aang has the choice to stay with Guru Patik or save his friends. So it's a trope, but it's like, because Empire did it, you can't see it done again without being like, aha.
Yeah, that's very true.
Well, I wonder what he'll do with this, though. Will they go the easy route and just have him do the Luke thing and rush off to save his friends? Or will he make, you know, what obviously Tom thinks is the right choice and stay there and try to find the staff?
Yeah, I should have watched the trailer. I think I meant to, and I just didn't get to it. to see what we see. But I think there's a scene where we see the stranger meet the dark blue, navy blue wizard. So I think we'll see. I mean, we'll have to see some kind of resolution here, even if it's a slow resolution, because I like the Harfoot stranger plotline better this season than last, because last season week to week it was just a slog for me. But it is a little bit better. But I feel like we're going to next couple weeks there'll be more, because it was really that scene with the stranger, or those couple scenes, and then we see the scene with Nori and the Goond, and with all the stores, and really not too much happened there, other than Poppy gets a little flirt on with Mary Mac there.
Nobody.
Yeah, nobody.
Wasn't named by his parents until like 2 years ago. I'm like, whoa. Some slow acting parents.
Yeah, well, what the whole time were they just like, hey, you? Yeah,
like, you're right.
It's like, wow.
Yeah,
like,
but Nori and the Goond are talking about, because the Goond is saying, Nori's saying, well, why don't you just leave? And the Goond says, well, we can't leave. We've always been here. Well, my ancestors dug these burrows. My husband, I married him under that tree, and now he's buried under that tree, and I'll be buried with him. So, but of course we know that eventually they'll all end up in the Shire. So curious to see if we see kind of an exodus of these stores, and probably not this season, because it seems like they're going to at least be there at least through this season, if not early next season. But I don't know if y'all had. I didn't really have much here because there just wasn't too much. But
I have a semi-wild speculation.
Go for it.
Well, that is that like he will try and find his staff, and then realize he's got to go save Nori. And conveniently, there's this like super ancient, well-respected tree in with the stores.
Oh, you were right. Yeah.
That, will probably be there in some sort of culminating battle between the masked men and the stores, and possibly a branch ends up in his hands. I'm just spitballing here.
No, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Because
I would probably bet good money on this one.
Yeah, they brought up the tree that's there where the husband is buried. So no, you're totally right. But then he's just rewarded for going off and doing the very thing Tom told him not to do. So.
Well, it just proves that the real wizard staff is the friends we made along the way.
That's right.
But yeah,
he really should just go to Diagon Alley and buy a staff. Like if they sell wands there, they must sell staffs. So staves, I guess.
Staves, Gans.
Yeah. Oh, and he's totally not Gandalf, because Tom quotes Gandalf's line from the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
About many that live deserve death. He doesn't use the exact words, but he basically says it. And some that die to deserve life. And I was like, okay, now you're just hitting us in the face with a cinder block that it's Gandalf.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's really just confirming that Tom is really Eru Ilúvatar, because he has the grand plan of he knows he'll need Gandalf in 3,000 years, or will need Gollum in 3,000 years to carry the ring and fall into Mount Doom. So it's really Tom is Eru Ilúvatar all along.
And with so much about the secret fire, again, it makes me wonder if that's where they're going with Tom. Please don't. But it's like, they will anyway. Who knows?
Yeah, and I was hoping by now we would have seen some, because they're this dark blue wizard, they really haven't done much with it outside of the first couple episodes. So I was hoping we would have seen something with him and his relationship with these masked men, and I want to see these guys in action. So I'm hoping we see something like that in the next
I've given him the name that I give to any bad guy in a show who sits in his big chair and does nothing. He's Lord Boring. Lord Boring.
Boring.
Just sits there, commands lackeys to go out and do his bidding, and just, picks up his staff every once in a while. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Unless they're building him up like Palpatine, because they, in the original Star Wars trilogy, you know, when he finally gets up and reveals that he can shoot lightning out of his hands, it's a big moment. So
yeah,
but otherwise, he's just Lord Boring. He just sits there and you know, says, "I am evil," and that's it.
yeah.
Well, unless you'll have anything else in that plot line, I wonder if y'all wanted to go to Kaza Doom and check in with Durin, and both Durins and Disa, because we see Annatar, which I think if we circle back to and finish at Aragion again, because all roads are leading there anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, we see Annatar. They need more mithril to for these rings for Celebrimbor, so he goes trying to get it, and you know, Durin, the ring is of course affecting him, and he says, well, you know, we'll stockpile it and we'll keep it secret, keep it safe. And
wait, does he say that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, because he's talking about he's gonna stockpile it so that they can get more for it whenever it's needed during a war.
He's war profiteering.
War is inevitable. Yeah,
that's exactly what that was. Yeah, I love how Durin the Younger is like he's a fairly, I want to say, immature character through the series, which has been okay. But I like the fact that his immaturity makes him distrust Sauron or Sir Annatar. Yeah. Everybody else is like super smart and like cultured and whatever, and he's like, this guy's a bad dude. Like he just nails it like immediately. Like we should not trust him. There's something wrong with this guy.
Yeah, because the king, you know, last week he was wanting, he's implementing his ring tax. He's implementing we're going to take 50% of from the other dwarfs in exchange for rings. So he's like, I mean, it's just driving him to this. Like it's like even in real life, like if you're a billionaire, like you don't need more money. Like you have enough.
Like the Warren Buffett quote, you know, how much is enough? Just a little more.
Yeah. But you know, he sends and he sends or tries to send his people down to mine. But before that, you know, Durin and Disa have that conversation of, you know, she says we can't do it, and she's like, you know, we'll do whatever we need to show the rest of our people that, you know, he's old and frail and feeble and minded and all this. And like, I mean, you really feel for Durin here, because he's my dad, and if you've
I love that.
If you've ever had a family member go through any type of you know, mental decline or dementia, like it's tough, and you don't want to see these people that, you know, may have been strong, you know, or I mean even physical decline. You don't want to see these people that have been, you know, just giants in your life become, you know, succumb to, you know, that kind of thing. And
he says he may be lost and far away, but he's still my father.
Yeah, so I think
he's very affecting.
Yeah, I think he's hoping, you know, he can still talk him down from this, and even after the king is like, because he tried to take the ring off of him, or you know, he says the ring is, or what does he say? He says you're not controlling it; it's controlling you.
And he's like, it is mine. You know, like he does the classic thing when people have one of these rings of power. He's like, take it off, father. He's like, no, it is mine. And I'm like, oh boy, we're at that stage, huh?
Yeah. Well, and I like this in both the other scene where he accuses Navi, where he has taken the ring off and he put it on the table, right? And he accuses Navi, says, you took it. Contrasted with Galadriel. Yep, taking my ring off. You go, Elrond. Go. I'm gonna go fight these orcs. Like it's like a non-issue to take off the ring for the elves.
Well, it's also because those rings were not forged by, or he wasn't involved in those forging of those.
Right. That kind of showcases that the rings don't have the same bend to them. At least the elven ones don't.
Yeah. And then, you know, Disa, she's determined we're going to stop him, and you know, she's blocking their way into the Narvi, and his crew come in, and she's blocking his way, and they're like, you know, if you don't move, I will see you moved. And then she starts singing, and you're like, what is she going to do? And I was like, I thought she was going to like plug the hole or something, like she was going to call down a stone or something, but you know, then she like channels her Batman and calls in the giant bats to come in and, you know, send Narvi and the crew running. But I mean, I like the scene. It was cool, but at the same time, I'm like, these dwarves have lived here their whole lives. Like, they know there's these bats, and like, are they really that scared of them?
The scene just felt unnecessary.
It was very Ace Ventura. They're in my hair. They're in my hair. Running away from the bats. It's just, like, that was what was going through my mind when they started running. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? they're a cave dwelling race.
I just imagine the scene of Batman where he's from Batman Begins, where he like calls the bats in and he's walking down the hall, and the bats are all
I love that around. Scene actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of Batman in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see what happens with Khazad-dûm with the dwarves, and because I didn't say earlier, I said it in the summary, but Annatar sees the Balrog in the fire. So I don't know if that was like a vision, or if he was like, starting to communicate with it and kind of bring it from out of its deep dark hole or what. So I think they're
go ahead. Like, that's one of the 3 smiles you get out of Sir Annatar in this episode. He sees it and he sort of does this little smirk, and you're like, yeah, okay.
He twirls the mustache.
Yep.
So I'm curious. I don't think we'll see the Balrog. I mean, they gotta have to pay it off at some point. So it might be like a season 3 thing if they to finally get because these dwarves are gonna have to be driven out of Khazad-dûm, I feel like, at some point, and then so probably next season, but we'll see. Yeah, I didn't have anything else in Khazad-dûm. So if we wanted to move on to, like I said, one of my favorite parts of the show is Numenor. And I think Dom on Discord said it like Elendil's doing his very best St. Thomas More impersonation here.
Yeah. Yeah, he even has family members who want to talk him out of it, just like Thomas More. Wow.
Yeah, because because at this point, Elendil, he was taken in because he wouldn't acknowledge or wouldn't, bend the knee to Pharazon.
I am the king's good servant, but Iluvatar's first. He might as well have said.
Yeah.
Channeling Thomas More.
Yeah, and he's in jail, and they're trying to figure out what to do with him because they wanted him to recant and be a good, because he's kind of a figure for the faithful, and they acknowledged him as captain. And so his little crony buddy says, his assistant to, I was joking on another Discord server of like, if these people were office characters, and he's like his little crony's like the Dwight of like pulling up the he's the assistant to the prime minister.
That's such an, oh my gosh, that's so spot on.
I was thinking that blue guy who works for Palpatine through most of the prequels.
Oh, Masameda, yeah.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. And his son, they're trying to figure out what to do with him. Like, they need to punish him. They want him to recant because that would give Pharazon the power, but he's not going to do that. So like, well, if we just kill him, that'll make the people mad. So what do we do? And the little crony says, "Oh, I found this ancient law of let him be judged by the Valar if he's a faithful." And of course, that's not going to go well for Pharazon because he is faithful to the Valar. So,
right.
Even though Arian tries to talk him out of it by and you feel that as I know Pat and I are both fathers. Like, you feel that like if your daughter asks you something, like, it's hard not to give in sometimes. Like,
yes,
I wouldn't, hopefully I wouldn't give in to, something like this, but like, she throws her arms around him, and, she's like, because Anarion still is somewhere, yet to be seen. So, but she's like, I'm your only family, because she's almost has written off Anarion, but, he's still not going to give in. So
he says, "It is hardly mercy to ask a man to set his integrity aflame," which was a cool line. I like that.
Well, that's when he's talking to Miriel when she comes in.
Yeah, because he brings Arian brings in Miriel because she thinks Arian thinks Miriel can talk Elendil out of it, and because Miriel's whole thing is, we need good men, we need faithful men to be here for Numenor, but at the same time, like, you have to take a stand at some point, and that's what Elendil's doing, is he's taking that stand. So he agrees to be judged by the Valar, and
he says faith needs to be lived, which I thought was that's very Epistle of James right there.
Yes. Yeah. I love the actor did such a good job with the scene where he hugs his daughter, and you can see he's got sort of that joy on his face. And then she asks him, to recant and to not do this, and you can see his face just goes like stony after that. He's like, I can't, he's hating the fact that he's in this situation. And then the conversation with Miriel happens, and it's like you said, it's just such a great, faith has to be lived. I can't, the lines he says they nailed it. They did a good job. Like I said, I really like this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they bring them to this little cove, I guess, and they call the worm. And at first I thought it was going to be the same one we saw in the premiere that sank the ship that Halbrand and his crew were on and was attacking them. But I think, at least from the research I could do online, they are different different creatures.
Oh yeah.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
I think the first one, I think the premiere one was more like a dragon type of a thing, and this one was more like a shark with tentacles.
Oh yeah, it would look like a goblin shark.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because I thought that at first it was going to be the same, and I was like, oh, that'd be interesting to see this same creature delivered, in a way delivered Galadriel to Elendil. And now he's going to deliver Elendil to, whatever his fate is. But as he's about to go in, and says, I will abide by the judgment of the Valar and all that, Miriel comes in and says, I will take his penance I will take his sentence because he's following me. And if I'm to walk the path, I'm to walk the path of the faithful, I must lead, which is great. Very very Christ-like, very, and she's going into water, very baptismal, she's getting a baptism.
Or it's almost like Aslan taking Eustace's place, right? It's the person taking taking the place of the condemned. The other thing I thought too was that they say it's the judgment of the Valar, but is it Ulmo specifically who's judging you?
Right. Because he's the only one that's really paying it. I mean, granted, Manway's paying attention, but he is really paying attention, and he's active. And I love that, because the line just keeps coming back. The sea is always right. Well, there's a reason the sea is always right, and that's because he's the one Valar who's actively helping us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, Miriel goes in, because we saw the scene in the trailer of her going into water and coming face to face with this thing. So we see her go in and come, and she can't see it. And and I kind of took this as no one's come back from this before. It may have been a long time. They probably have legends of this happening or something, but it's probably been outside of living memory that someone has come back from this. And of course she's sent back from this, baptismal, kind of dies in that way and is sent back. And I know a couple episodes ago we were joking about Monty Python, but I just had in my mind a sea creature controlled by the Valar giving a queen back to the land is not a basis for a system of government.
And I love how the guy is she's been judged, and then she gets shot up out of the water, innocent.
Yeah. And that just blew up in Pharazon's face, because Elendil hails her as the Sea Queen, which I kind of took as more of an honorific, title of you're the actual leader, because I think at this point she's still not, she's not immediately going to be the queen again, or have ruling power. I think she's still kind of at Pharazon's mercy, but now the people are hailing her as a queen, as queen of the sea, which is, the sea is always right. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with that. I
think it's setting her up as the head of the faithful.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
I think so. I think it's going to lead to. I think it's going to kind of lead to a divide, even more of a divide, and almost like a Numenorian civil war, type of maybe not that level, but I think we're going to definitely see Pharazon like going further down the dark path because we see him looking to the Palantir later, which he was, that was his whole thing. Miriel's using elf magic and she's succumbing to that power, but now he's doing it. So I almost wonder if eventually we're going to see, because there is some romantic tension simmering between her and Elendil, and I was kind of thinking like, are they going to have get engaged or become betrothed? But then Pharazon comes in and says, "Oh, if you marry me, I will, I'll let the faithful go live in the West and never bother them again." And she'll kind of do that as a way to pacify that. But I don't know if either of y'all had any thoughts on that.
I think I was not on that specifically, but I have this theory that Miriel's fate in the Silmarillion and the Akalabeth, where in despair she throws herself into the sea, is not going to happen because she's already been thrown into the sea in this and been judged worthy. I think that fate is going to be transferred to Aarion, actually, because she's going down this very dark path that I really think is just going to end in despair. And that she's going to, and her name, Aarion, the Ea part of her name has connotations of the sea in Tolkien's languages. So I wonder if she will throw herself into the sea as Numenor burns in the downfall.
Yeah, I mean, I hope she, through all this, like she'll kind of become a believer again and become, or at least like become a faithful and will follow her father and eventually her brothers. But yeah, I know in the past, Thomas, you talked about her maybe, building a certain temple to a certain
temple to Morgoth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause she's in the architect's guild or whatever it is.
I kind of have two kind of wild speculations on that. And the first one is that, like, once she figures out what they're using her temple for, that's the point at which she's like, all right, we got to get everybody out of Dodge. Like, things are going to go badly.
Shut her down.
She's seen what happens. Like, she's seen that she's touched the Palantir. She saw
That's
it.
right. Yeah.
She saw the Akalabeth. And so I think she's going to be when they start siphoning everybody out of the city and slowly moving all the faithful off. And I think by the end of this episode, or by the end of the season, but possibly before that, the other wild speculation is that Elendil is going to head to Middle Earth with a lot of the faithful and sort of establish Gondor more. Land at
Pelargir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reunite with his son, figure out, we got to go fight in Eregion, and then come back and decide, okay, we need to set up a fortress against Mordor now, and start building Gondor. That is my wild speculation on that.
Yeah. I mean, I like that idea too, but it's also Pharazon, and I think it was earlier this season, he was talking about going to Middle Earth and I think someone on our Discord was talking about, Numenorian imperialism. So I think Pharazon was talking about it, and that there are resources that they can see, because they haven't, if Pharazon learns about Mithril, I feel like he's going to be all into that. So, we'll see.
I think as a leader, like it's a good way to get rid of somebody who's popular, though, is to send them to
true.
The colonies, right?
Yeah. Like, send them to the front. Yeah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you get a Julius Caesar type who comes back and
oh yeah.
So the Numenor stuff is great in this one, and I'm kind of curious if we'll see, because I know in the book Numenor kind of has a war against Sauron in between, like after what happens at Eregion happens, there's kind of a war between Numenor and Sauron, and he allows himself to be captured basically. So I thought that was going to maybe happen at Eregion, that that Pharazon was like, oh, we hear these rings and this mithril, we have to go and we have to get our part of it, we have to get what's ours. And they get there and they help defeat the orcs or whatever, they help save the survivors of Eregion, and they're like, oh, we'll take this Annatar guy back home with us as a prisoner. And then of course he starts doing his bad things to to corrupt Numenor even more. So but it seems like that may not happen yet. It could happen. I don't know, but it seems like
Palantir like basically shows Pharazon that Halbrand is Sauron, right? That's what I took from that.
Yeah,
or at least he saw Halbrand and was like, "Oh, this man, we need to find him," because that was the whole thing last season. Is Numenor was going to install Halbrand as the Southland king, and then they would have kind of an in with. I think that was Pharazon's idea. Is like, "Oh, we'll have an in with Middle Earth, and we can exploit that." And then, of course, that didn't happen. But
yeah. I could see it going where Sauron escapes the destruction of Eregion, not as a captive, but takes down Adar and then leads the orcs to their new home in Mordor, and then holds up there, and then at that point it becomes more Numenor's responsibility to try to hem him in and take him out, and that'd be season 3 would effectively be the war. And then him eventually at some point getting dragged back. Dragged back, quote unquote. I'm doing air quotes around the drag back.
Yeah, it's just tricky without knowing how many seasons they're going to get. Because from the stuff I've been reading, like Amazon is happy with the numbers, but so I think the plan is still 5 as far as I know, but I don't think season 3, like it's being written right now from what I've seen. So it's going to be a couple of years, and like it's going to be 10 years between start and finish probably if they get 5. So
yeah.
So we'll see what happens there, because if they're going to kind of do what we're thinking of the Akalabeth and then end it with the Last Alliance, like that's got to start kind of happening. But yeah. So then kind of the last plot line is back to old Eregion, where poor Celebrimbor is just losing his mind, unfortunately, to Annatar's manipulations, and because he's having trouble remembering people's names, and I don't think they really moved along the Miriel is Celebrian plotline. I don't know that I'm on. I was never on that train, but I could definitely see some evidence that they're at least like wanting to point us that way as like as a red herring. But they didn't really advance that this time, so I don't know if that's kind of still supposed to be something we're thinking about. But Celebrimbor doesn't remember her.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, when she responds to his like, "What's your name?" I thought she said her name, and then when I rewatched it, I watched it with subtitles, and like, oh, that's not what she said. Oh.
Yeah. So but it's all kind of tricks by Annatar showing Celebrimbor's losing his mind. Because he's having trouble trying to forge these rings, and they're out of Mithril, and that's when we had talked about Annatar goes to try to get more. And so he's like, he's basically trying to say, you focus on forging. You stay here in this tower, and I'm not going to let you out. You don't need to worry about anything. Just, just delve deep into your mind and forge. And he's trying to play, oh, I'm worried about you, and you're so good at what you do that you don't need to worry about these earthly things. But of course, he just wants them to kind of ignore everything that's happening outside, so he can make these 9 rings. Because I think that we're going to see that. I mean, it has to happen this season with Eregion, probably not being there in a couple episodes.
That was in the trailer, right?
Yeah. Well, he says, "Bring me the 9." Yeah. So it's
right. So
yeah, I'm assuming we're going to see that kind of those kind of forged, but yeah, we see. All that's happening, and then eventually a body washes up at Eregion, and it's an elf body with a message carved into it with a knife. And he's like, "Don't tell Lord Celebrimbor." And Meridiania, which I don't know why at that point you don't go tell Celebrimbor, but I guess they're still kind of acknowledging that Annatar is this. I don't know if anyone else knows he's like a Maiar, something other than an elf, or if it's just Celebrimbor who does, but. I guess they're kind of still following that lead, because I mean, at that point, I feel like they should have been like, well, maybe we should at least tell them what's going on.
Well, I think last episode, like Annatar tells her, like, be careful what you tell to Celebrimbor, or he might go like full on evil and become that evil demon from your vision. So
yeah, that's true.
I think so. I could see why she would be tricked by that.
Yeah, but he's just like. Leave it all to me, my friend. I'll take care of everything. And even when they start hearing, and because the elves on the watchtower start seeing, they see the torches and across the river and these catapults and all this thing, and they start ringing the siege bell. And Thomas and I were laughing beforehand. These elves are just running like willy nilly to and fro.
Yeah. Where are they running to? Like,
don't you guys have emergency procedures for this? This is supposed to be the Middle Ages. Like, this is a common occurrence. Everybody knows what to do in a siege.
It's been how long since orcs have really been sighted, and how long since they've had a war? So, I mean, most of these elves are probably like, it's been thousands of years since any kind of open conflict. So they're probably just not used to it. But I was just laughing because they're just like running back and forth past each other. And like, I mean, you think you would at least go into your homes or go into the more fortified part of the city, but they're just running. Like,
they're just running around aimlessly. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how how all that starts with Celebrimbor talking to the hunk of metal that he was trying to make a ring out of that didn't work. And in any work I've ever done, if I start accusing the thing itself of betraying me, I know I probably need to take a break. If I'm yelling at the code, I'm trying, or I'm I'm angry at the bicycle that I'm trying to put together, I probably need to take a break, get some water.
Yeah, because Annatar's he's here just watching this chaos unfold, and eventually when it's all kind of coming to a culmination, we see him because we see him cut his hand and like, so I was wondering, is that because he he needs like some of his blood is kind of, because this illusion that he's going to show Celebrimbor is going to be a pretty powerful one. So like, does he need to like give some of his blood to it somehow? I didn't know if y'all had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I took from that it was part of his spell or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically there's some kind of cost to do what he's doing. Like, this is beyond, simple deceptions or playing in the shadow realm or anything like that. No, I've got to actually and you can see his face kind of gets this reserved look like, okay, I've actually got to pull out like a big gun here. and then he cuts himself to sort of like prove that, okay, this is actually going to cost me something.
Right. Because he says, I think last season, all creation requires sacrifice.
Yeah.
So it's the same, I guess, whenever he has to cast a spell, especially a big one, it's going to cost you something.
Yeah, because I think I found out this recently, but apparently there was a scene that wasn't filmed or partly filmed for Fellowship of the Ring in the prologue where Sauron is forging the ring, where he actually cuts his hand as part of the forging. Like, I guess infuses his blood, and you see him in the finish scene. You actually see him holding a knife, so they kind of left that in there. But so that was kind of interesting to see that right, and then right before this. So yeah, I kind of took that as it was just he needed that power. But when he brings, because Celebrimbor comes out and sees, and he's like, he hears a siege bell. I think something's wrong, and Sauron has cast this illusion and starts saying it's and I don't know that this was really shown before, or at least like it wasn't really focused on, but we see the statue of Feanor holding a Silmaril.
Yep.
And Annatar, of course, is like, what you'll make is a little more, the Silmarils will be little more than a whisper of something that held the light of the two trees of Valinor. Well, you're going to make something better.
And then he gives him Feanor's hammer.
Yeah. Well, he had the hammer, I think in season 1, when Elrond met with Celebrimbor, he had the hammer, but I think, but it's just him like saying, here, take up here's your tool to go begin your work. But and then he says, I think he does say the precious, or he says some precious something or other in that.
It's your rings will be the most precious things in Middle Earth. And I was like, Then it's the Leo point. Yeah. He said the thing. Yep.
And then of course at the very end, Annatar, Celebrimbor goes back and Annatar sees and then it cuts to what's really happening, and it's dark. Elves are running to and fro, and you start seeing the fireballs descend from Adar's side of the river. So the siege of Eregion is happening. So I think that was kind of the end of my notes on this episode. I don't know if y'all had anything else kind of, or if y'all wanted to touch on that plot any more on the kind of the final fireball scene or anything.
I liked how it's, daytime in the illusion, right? And then it's nighttime. It's sort of that I'm going to put the prettiest veneer over this as I possibly can, and he makes it daytime, and he kind of highlights the statue of Feanor and the light going through the fake Silmaril in the statue's hands, which is a crystal, right? It's not whatever the material of the statue is, marble or whatever that is. And it's interesting in this episode, like Sir Annatar does the same kind of a thing with whenever Celebrimbor is like, oh, I really should, or no, I've got to buckle down and really focus on the rings. And Sauron is like, or Annatar is like, well, you're the Lord of Eregion. You've got responsibilities, man. Why don't you go take care of those? It's like, no, the 9 is the only possible thing. And you just see like Sauron. Yes, good. I love the smirks, the 2 smirks he gives. The first when he sees that the orcs are out there, it doesn't tell anybody, right? Like, if you were a city administrator and you had the realization that your city was about to go under siege, you would ring the bells then, and not when the fireballs start hitting your way. We get the smiles, which is, confirmation that, yes, indeed, you are all playing right into my hands. Thanks, Adar.
Yeah, because that's one thing Adar says to Galadriel says to Adar is like, you're going to give him this army, basically. Like, he's going to take this army and that he doesn't have, he just has his deception, but he's orchestrated this whole thing, like very, like we were saying, very Palpatine-like, and yeah. to get an army, and then presumably take it back to Mordor, where he'll set up shop and forge a ring. So,
and it takes me back that, and I know I talked about that scene for probably a good 10 minutes, but like the scene at the dinner table where they're talking about the fact that they did indeed get the thing that Sauron was promising them, right? She wanted an army and she got it, and he wanted children and he got it. And you're just like that's just another great devil analog. Yeah, he'll give you exactly what you want, and it turns out your wants are petty and stupid. And he knows it, you don't.
Yeah, and I think this is even further sealing of Adar's fate, unfortunately. Like, yeah. I think it sounds like it is going to end with Annatar, Saur Annatar, taking control of the army, and Adar, not being alive anymore. So it would hopefully at least we'll get kind of a final duel or something between the two of them, or some kind of final confrontation. But I feel like they have to at that point, because we saw Adar, we've seen them face to face several times. We saw them in season 1 when Halbrand captured Adar, and then season 2 when Adar had Halbrand prisoner, and then of course we saw the flashback of when Adar killed him, or presumably killed him. So
yeah,
I feel like we got to get that final resolution there. But
I hope Adar escapes and goes north and creates the beginnings of what will end up being Angmar, and then you get an epic battle between him and the Witch King. Some sort of other fan fiction down the road. But yeah, that's for free, Amazon.
Yeah. That could be pretty cool. Yeah. We'll see. What about before we have, I think that's my notes. I don't know if you have anything else, Thomas.
No, that's pretty much all my notes. Yeah, I'll be sorry to see Adar go if he is doomed. I like that he's still confident though, because Galadriel says don't give in to his lure, and Adar says, I'll make him choke on it.
Yeah.
So as Luke Skywalker once said, your overconfidence is your weakness. So
Like Galadriel's faith in her friends
is hers.
Brilliant.
Yeah, because I feel like we're going to see Elrond kind of rally. He's going to, because the elves from Lindon were sent already to Mordor, or about to be sent. So I think we'll see Elrond kind of rally them and kind of have their big cavalry charge. And I think he also goes to Durin. I think we saw that in the trailer of him saying, "I need your axe." So I think we'll see him stop off at Khazad-dûm as well. So yeah, I'm excited to see how this kind of big battle all unfolds. And yeah, we have 2 more at this point. So
yeah, I'm trying to think if I have any other wild speculations. I think it's around Elrond going south and hooking up with the Númenóreans and bringing them north, and then okay, we're close enough. I got to go see if I can get Durin to come in and bring the army in, and then we get our battle of 5 armies out of that.
Awesome. Well, before we go, we did have a little bit of feedback. So there's been some great conversations on Discord. So if you haven't joined us there, definitely join us, because we're talking, speculating, all that good stuff. But we had some feedback from Mercury on Discord on our premiere episode of when we did all the first 3. He said, one other example of he said, great podcast reviewing Rings of Power 1 through 3. One other example of Halbrand exhibiting power is when he daunts the sea monster with his eyes.
Yep. I
know that this is an explicit power of Morgoth, but maybe Sauron learned it, and he certainly turns the monster aside. And then he also said, I think it was Osse rocking Caradonc's boat, because we haven't seen Caradon either in a bit. So I'm hoping we get to see more of him this season, if not. And hopefully we'll see him more in the show beyond. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. A little Maiar reference there.
Or Ulmo himself, he knows those elves are going to need those 3 rings later to oppose the 1 ring of Sauron. So he maybe's like, oh no, don't drop those in the ocean, please.
Yeah, I feel like Círdan has probably the of any given Middle Earther, he's probably got the closest connection to both Ulmo and Osse, and just. He probably was like, rocked the boat a little bit. Oh, never mind. I got the message in one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then we had one more bit of feedback on Spotify, so you can actually leave comments on Spotify. This was on our most recent episode. Symbobim on Spotify said, Sauron plus Carnage equals Sarnage. So I guess he's...
Sarnage.
Oh,
I love it.
There we go.
Sarnage.
So we're probably going to have to move on from Sir Annatar at some point soon, because I think he'll fully transform out of that. He might keep the form, but I think he'll be fully revealed on who he is to everyone. So won't really be any ambiguity there for a while. So, but so thanks for that feedback, and definitely leave us more. But I think that is it for this episode of The Secrets of Middle-earth. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make this show possible, including Ann H., Randy W., Mary K., Brian D., and Jack W. Their generous donations help us continue to create The Secrets of Middle-earth and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them at sqpn.com/give. Now we'd love to hear from you, our listeners. What do you think about the latest episode of Rings of Power? You can let us know on our Facebook page or on Twitter, or by sending an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, by leaving us a comment on YouTube or Spotify, or by visiting our channel in the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. So join us next time for our discussion on the penultimate episode of Rings of Power. And until then, thank you, Thomas, for joining me and sharing the secrets of Middle-earth.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Pat.
Oh, you're very welcome, Jeff. I am still cautiously optimistic.
Glad to hear. And until then, I'm Jeff Haecker. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. PlayStation Portable. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found, or at starquest.fm/PSP.